Welcome back to Open Line. We are talking about Islam and ISIS, and we have with us Associate Professor at Vanderbilt of Religion and Islamic Studies, Dr. Richard McGregor. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Philip. Hello, Philip.
Hey, good evening.
Hello.
The term Islamic extremist or extreme Islamics, which are the terrorists, that's kind of how they're labeled. How do you feel about this, that they're not actually extremists at all? They're simply good Muslims. They're doing what the Quran tells Muslims to do. And the Muslims who say, oh, we're all about peace and this, that, and the other thing, they're just bad Muslims. The ones that don't become terrorists are bad Muslims.
So that's how...
Our terrorists are actually good Muslims. They're doing what the Quran tells them to do.
All right, well, let's talk about that. So the point of that question is the Quran telling people to be violent? Is the Quran instructing the kinds of things that ISIS is doing? So what do you think about what Philip said there?
Sure. I think this is an important perspective to speak to. Right? When we think about religious traditions, religious communities, we are typically faced with scripture, right? And the theologies that come out of those scriptures, and we are faced also with the history of those communities themselves. So when we think about Christianity in the United States, when we think about the Jewish religion and its long varied history, and we think of other religious traditions and other religious communities, to be a practitioner, right, of a religious tradition means to live in a community, to live in an interpretive community, right? No matter what your perspective, no matter what denomination, for example, of Christian that you might be, you are the inheritor, you are a participant in a living interpretive community. What makes one Christian a Catholic and another Christian a Baptist is perhaps simple to say. They are committed to different living interpretive communities. They're both Christians, but they are part of different interpretive communities with different histories. One isn't Christian, any more Christian or less Christian, let's say, than the other. And we could make those kind of parallels to other religious traditions. I don't think turning to a situation that we've just imagined there and saying, well, who follows the most literal interpretation of Christian scriptures, and that person we're going to anoint as the best Christian, or the most Christian, the better Christian. If we imagine that just as a thought experiment, that I think it rings hollow to us. Right? We're missing this important historical and interpretive and communal dimension that is religion and religious practice. The Islamic tradition, like any other, yes, has a primary scripture, revelation, over which various Muslim communities over history, throughout history, have differed in their reading, the emphases that they give in their readings and their interpretations of this primary religious text. I would say claiming that a group like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any extremist, literalist, and let's call it what it is. It's shallow engagement, right, with the text. Right? It thinks that the revelation is easily decoded, right, into a simple list of do's and don'ts, that's the essence of the religious tradition, and that's the essence of the Quran, is, like I say, pretty short-sighted. Islamic history is full of diversity. We have extremes at both ends. That is to say, literalist readings. We have very liberal and progressive traditions within the Islamic tradition. These are living interpretive communities with their own take, their own readings, their own interpretation of the Quran. And I think it's a misnomer. To claim that a simple literalist reading is somehow better and somehow more makes someone a better and more religious person. I think history of community flies in the face of that analysis.
History would, the question that some have is Islam inherently violent in some way? And when you hear that question, I think the answer you gave kind of speaks to that. But when you hear that question, again, how do you respond to that? Is Islam inherently violent in some way?
Islamic law, Islamic theology, Islamic history, and Islamic scripture has within it capacity for violence. Capacity for violence in the sense that war, corporal punishment, controlling violence within a community, right? These are important issues within history and within scripture. The Islamic tradition has engaged deeply with ideas like jihad, right? Holy war. What about justification? What about ethics, right, around war? What are the proper controls of violence? What are the ways to mitigate violence? Are there occasions where Muslims should engage in violence? I mean, these are big, open questions. The resources for violence are there in the Islamic tradition, as they are in the Christian tradition, as they are in the Jewish tradition and other traditions. We see violent, intolerant Buddhism. A minor strain, but it's there. The resources are there. We find sort of nationalistic, intolerant versions of Hinduism, especially in the modern period. The resources are there for those voices if they want to make those arguments, if they want to be intolerant. You can find with religious resources, religious language, religious ideas to support violence and intolerance.
It can be twisted, as it were. For years, the Bible was used to justify slavery. Pastors preached about that in the pulpit here in the United States. And so as a professor of religious studies, is Islam or is the Quran somehow, are there more opportunities to interpret things that might be violent than there are in some other religion, or is it all equal? Do you know what I mean? Is there more that could be interpreted in Christianity that people could use to justify violence, or is there more in the Quran, or can we even make a judgment like that?
Well, just as we can go back, those of us, let's say, who are Christians, we can go back into the scriptures and pull out passages, as you said, that confirm our current commitments. If our current commitments are, as you pointed out, right, historically grounded, and we want to defend slavery, we want to defend, segregation, if we want to defend or attack the position of women, perhaps, right, the position of minorities, etc., etc. These issues, we can turn to religious texts for the fodder, right, for making those arguments in our contemporary practices. The Quran has those, has that material in it, right? Around, as we mentioned earlier, around violence, around war, around what is apparent intolerance. At the same time, the Quran, again, like the other Abrahamic scriptures and other world religions, has plenty of resources on the other side, right? To balance out resources towards forgiveness, resources towards community building, resources towards friendship, resources towards tolerance, towards diversity. The Quran is rich in those dimensions. As I would say, as we know, those of us from a Christian background, we know that the Bible has plenty of those resources too.
Okay, let's go to Christina. Hello, Christina.
Hi, how are you?
Great, go right ahead.
Okay. With the recent attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, we've seen a resurgence of fear on the part of a lot of Americans towards all Muslims. And my question is, what do you think needs to take place to educate the public as well as reassure them that terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS aren't representative of Islam and all Muslims? And I'll hang up and let y'all talk about it.
Well, that's the essence of the whole conversation. I appreciate the question. How do you answer that?
Right. I think it's important for us as a community, right, as a diverse, modern country that we are, that we bear in mind a few important inclusive perspectives. One is to say there are radical voices and perspectives within every religious tradition. Within the Islamic tradition, of course, it is there. It's available, as we mentioned earlier, almost universally through modern technology. My response to that threat to our nation, to our Muslim communities within the United States, is to say our strategy, our national strategy, I think, should be to support our Muslim neighbors, to support Muslim American communities, especially in these times of stress. Why? I think that the best inoculation against extremism is healthy communities. Strong families, healthy communities, thriving, living the American dream, I think, is the best inoculation against Islamic extremism that, as we know, can reach out and connect with potentially any youth, any young person, anywhere in the world at any time. We can't shut down the internet, but what we can do is protect, encourage communities that will protect themselves, that will be thriving, strong American Muslim communities. I think that in the long term, that is the solution.
And now, all right, we have to take a break. And I want to come back, or we'll start taking some more calls, and ask, are you optimistic? It seems like the two faiths are in conflict, without a doubt. Christianity, Islam. I want to ask if you're optimistic about the future, where we're going. All right, we'll take a break. If you want to call, there's the number 615-737 plus 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.